And that, my friends, was HuntingFarmer's special, now not so secret recipe for tag soup. Yes, with that, my Ohio hunting season has drawn to an end, and I had tag soup. This video is going to be a recap of how my hunting went this year in Ohio. This is the very first year I ever hunted Ohio, so I learned a lot. There's some mistakes I probably made. I plan to answer the question in the title, is Ohio the land of the giants or a complete waste of time? Now, as I just mentioned, this was my first year hunting Ohio. I'm not some alpha hunter or some professional. In fact, I'm sure many of you out there have skills way above mine when it comes to hunting. But I took this one as a challenge this year to go to a brand new state, a state I have never hunted before, and just start from scratch and to see what I can come up with. Now, a buddy of mine joined me. He helped me through this process. He had never hunted Ohio, but between the two of us, we tag team it, and we had an absolute blast. So I'm going to give you a recap, kind of how we approached hunting a brand new state, how we did when we did hunt it, how many times did we hunt it, did we scout it all those types of questions I'm going to go over. I have a ton of footage that I'm going to roll here as I'm talking. We ran trail cameras, so I have hundreds, if not close to 1,000 trail camera pictures. And if you saw in your thumbnail, some pretty impressive bucks. I'm going to do this a bit differently than most, and I'm going to start with the answer to the question in the title, and then the rest of the video I'm going to work my way backwards and show you how I got to that answer. So to answer the question, I think Ohio has some great potential. In fact, I think it lives up to every bit of the hype. If you do any online reading or watching YouTube or any online forums about hunting, Ohio gets some really high reviews, and I think it's for a good reason. Ohio did not disappoint me. I did not have to come home with a buck in the back of my truck in order to be impressed. In fact, I went into it knowing it was quite a high possibility that I wasn't going to get a deer. Anytime I hunt a new state for the very first time, I'm not sure I ever killed a deer the first year. It just seems for me, I'm probably slower than most, but my learning curve takes a bit. So it almost always takes me more than 1 year, but I enjoyed the process and I enjoyed the challenge that Ohio offered me. We hunted 100% public land, and in fact we hunted southeast Ohio, and we hunted in the Wayne National Forest. Now, as a quick disclaimer, you can email me, direct message me, whatever means of communication to try and get more specific. I'm just simply not going to do that, so we'll just get that out front right now. In fact, I won't even tell you what county we were in. I'm simply going to say we were hunting southeast Ohio, and we were hunting Wayne National Forest. I wanted to tell you a little bit how we came to the conclusion where we were going to hunt in Ohio. As I mentioned, we never hunted it before, so when we decided we were going to try Ohio this year for the very first time, we approached it with a clean slate. That's one advantage I think that we had over some people maybe that would live in the state. It seems no matter where you live, you have a tendency to get stuck in a rut when you hunt public land. You almost always hunt maybe closest to home or a place that's going to be convenient or that you know quite well. Now, that isn't all wrong, but it does tend to put you in a rut. And you do the same thing over and over, and if you're not successful, that means you're repeating unsuccessful patterns. As we approached this, we had never hunted Ohio. We had nothing that was going to pull us in one direction or the other. The only self-imposed stipulation that we put on ourselves, we wanted on the eastern half of the state. So if you draw a line right through the middle of the state, north and south, we wanted to hunt on the eastern side of that line. And that was just simply because we knew we were going to put in some scouting trips, and we were hoping to do more than one hunting trip, and we wanted to be within 4, 5, 6 hours of our house. Western Ohio was out, so we were hunting eastern Ohio. Now, in doing some more research and watching videos and looking online, southern Ohio definitely gets higher ratings. Everybody says if you want a bigger buck, head to southern Ohio. Now, I would not consider myself a trophy hunter, although I will pass on some deer, and it really boils down to situation by situation. But if I have a choice between a larger buck and a smaller buck, I'm probably going to take the larger buck. So hunting southern Ohio seemed to make sense. Now, before anybody gets excited and up in arms, I know northern Ohio can hold big deer also. In fact, I've seen pictures and videos from northern Ohio, some absolute great buck being taken there. But as an overall consensus, southern Ohio probably has a little bigger deer, or at least bigger deer in higher numbers. And with that, we landed in southeast Ohio. Again, if you can just draw the lines right through the middle of the state, east and west and north and south, we were going to concentrate on the southeast portion of Ohio. Now that we had it narrowed down to that quadrant of Ohio, we simply just started poring over the maps. This is where we put in a ton of digital scouting. Eric, my friend, did every bit as much as I did, just simply picking out spots where we thought we could get away from most people, where people just wouldn't naturally gravitate to or would just simply overlook these spots. So we picked out a bunch of spots on map, and then it was time to put some boots on the ground. In March, we made our very first trip to Ohio, and again, having that closer distance, we had maybe 5 to 6 hour trip to the areas that we had picked out on the map originally. Now these scouting trips were quite the whirlwind. We would leave directly after my milking and morning chores. It was oftentimes still dark. We would drive through the morning, get out into Ohio mid-morning, and just hike all day until it got dark on us, and then drive back home that very same day in order for me to be home for the next morning's milking. My wife was gracious enough to do the evening milking on each of those trips, which allowed me time away for these quick scouting trips. Now those scouting trips I think helped us immensely in getting on the deer. Now online scouting is great, e-scouting, and those spots we originally picked out, but to fine tune it with boots on the ground was a huge plus when it came to actual hunting season. Now I really enjoy trail cameras, and they can offer a great amount of information. You can learn a lot from the trail cameras and the direction the deer are coming, what time of the day they're visiting the cameras. You can make judgments on approximately how far away you think they might be bedding. You can try and key in on different food sources. Our trail cameras did not disappoint. As you can see, we keyed in on many different locations, some of them food sources, some of them heavier cover. Other trail cameras we hung over remote water sources, and the trail cameras gave even more motivation to get back out there for another scouting trip so we could check the trail cameras. As you can see the size of some of these buck, I'm confident that any hunter, no matter where you hunted, would be happy with bucks this size. Now to find these deer on public land, most of the areas that we were hunting were nowhere near private. So we weren't like hunting on the edge of private and public. These were truly public land deer. Now I can't say that with 100% certainty. Deer can surprise you in the amount of ground they're willing to travel or cover in a day's time. But again, I would consider these 100% public buck. It's pretty impressive to be able to get pictures and videos of buck like this on public lands. So kudos to Ohio, and we were excited for hunting season. Now with Eric and I both being farmers, it had advantages and disadvantages when it came time to hunt Ohio. Now our schedules are basically 7 days a week. There is no day off for a farmer. But when we do take a day off, a weekday is the exact same as a weekend. Again, like I said, every day is the same for a farmer. There's chores that you have to do no matter what day of the week it is. So we chose to hunt middle of the week. Obviously, if we were going to take a day off, we were going to try and pick days that most other hunters or some other hunters wouldn't be hunting. And obviously, the weekend lends itself to more hunters being in the woods. Another advantage of our schedules was we didn't have to put in for time off. Now, we had to schedule our work and have somebody cover our work, but we didn't have to plan that ahead weeks in advance. There were times or trips that we made that we literally decided a day or two before we packed up and went. So that makes an advantage where, especially during the rut, we could simply wait for the weather to be right and then pack up and go. Now before we got to the rut, we hunted early season. The very first week that archery opened in Ohio, Eric and I made a trip out because we wanted to hunt early season and see if we can get on some early season food sources. Now that early season hunt was a very fast trip and we didn't get a ton of hunting time, but we both felt it was successful in that fact that we saw deer and that we were continuing to learn about the areas we were hunting. Our next plan of action was to simply wait for the calendar to turn to November and wait for the forecast to be right and head back out to southeast Ohio. As November rolled around, the temperatures lined up, Eric and I made our trip out for a rut hunt. Again, this trip did not disappoint. I had some great encounters several different times with a very mature Ohio whitetail. In fact, he was a buck of my dreams and still kind of haunts me to this day. I felt like I was so close and yet so far away. Although neither of us came home with a buck in the back of the truck on that trip, it was still a great success. We cherished our time that we had out there. We had rented a small cabin, and that was nice and gave an added comfort rather than the first hunting trip sleeping just out underneath the stars on a cot beside our truck. Although that made memories, the cabin was definitely a nice upgrade. Now, one wild card in hunting out of the state like this, or hunting public land in general, you never know how much pressure you're going to endure or how many other people you're going to see. In all of our scouting trips and that hunting in early season, we had seen virtually no sign of other hunters being in the same exact area that we were. We weren't finding any other trail cameras or tree stands that were hung or left there. When we were out hunting in November, again, we did not see a lot of other hunters. There were times when we saw a couple of vehicles parked at trailheads, but we had put a lot of effort into picking areas and accesses that we weren't going to see a lot of people, and so far that was working. Now it was on to their gun season. We mustered up just enough time off to make one more trip out to do some gun hunting on their opening day. Now, this was the first time we didn't hunt the middle of the week, and we anticipated that there might be some more hunting pressure for the opener of the gun season. Now, those assumptions were spot on, as the day before the gun opener, we made our trip out there, and as we were starting to collect some trail cameras and get ready for the gun opener, there was a lot of other hunters getting to enjoy the woods just like we were. Now, that led us to believe that the spots that we had already found that didn't see much pressure at that point in archery season and early season, it was going to be a different ball game in our gun season. So that night we were poring over the maps and kind of going to plan B and C and thinking about hunting areas that we had never physically hunted in before. Now, opening morning of the gun season was a cold, crisp morning, just a perfect morning to be in the whitetail woods. There was a good bit of shooting around us, and Eric and I each saw deer. In fact, right at first light, I had a doe come running past me, and then shortly after that, I had a buck come right up the hollow, and he was within 25 or 30 yards from me. Again, I'm not a trophy hunter, but this was not a buck that I was interested in shooting, and I gave him the free pass, and he walked right on by. One of the biggest takeaways and learning curves that we had from that was the dramatic increase in pressure. We anticipated that, but I think it was even more than what we anticipated. Another thing that we hadn't fully counted on was just the amount of change that we would see in the foliage around us. Now, obviously, we knew that the leaves would be dropping, the woods seemed to open up more, but when we got out there for that gun season, we just simply could not find thick enough areas. I don't think the areas that we were hunting were going to hold deer, especially for a gun season. But from our experience in gun season, you have to find some extremely thick cover in order for deer to be comfortable or to hold up in. So that was our year in a nutshell. Again, like I said, we felt like we learned a lot. It was definitely interesting to see the areas as a transition from early season to archery season and rut hunting to the gun season. We were both pleased with the amount of deer we saw. It wasn't a high density deer area, but just having that potential of a really good buck showing up when you do see deer left us with great anticipation and kept us wanting more and to hunt more. So I'd be curious what your thoughts are if you hunt Ohio public land, or if you would like to or have in the past. What have been your experiences? What have you learned? What would you do differently? And in fact, I can learn a lot from reading the comments and watching other people's videos and reading online forums. Add all that together, and if I can learn from somebody else's mistakes or from their tips and tricks, that's all going to help me in the future. Ohio did not disappoint, and it's definitely on our bucket list to get out there and try it again sometime in the future. Again, I'd love to hear from you. Maybe you just have a recipe for your own version of tag soup like I had. Put your comments down in the comment section. I really do enjoy reading them, and I try and get back to each and every one of you. I want to thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.